Hey guys, it's Philip Obenschain, your Nashville APTV correspondent, and I'm here with Laura Jane Grace of Against Me.
I don't ever wanna talk that way again. I don't wanna know people like that anymore. As if there was an obligation, as if I owed you something. Black me out. I wanna piss on the walls of your house. I wanna chop those brass rings off your fat fucking fingers. As if you were a kingmaker. As if, black me out.
And so you have an upcoming AOL series called True Trans with Laura Jane Grace. It premieres October 10th, which
yes.
by the time this airs, it should be up, the first 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a docuseries. Can you kind of explain the setup and how it came to be?
Right. Well, they came to me, and
Okay.
I wasn't familiar with AOL originals before, but they were like, this is what we do. This is what the shows we had last season. These are the potential shows we're going to have this season, and we'd really like you to do a show. And they were kind of open-ended with what that show could be about. So I knew I was going to be on tour all the year, and that the band being on tour was going to have to be the backdrop or whatever.
Okay.
And I basically just made a list of people that I wanted to prospectively talk to and have a conversation about gender with. And that ranged from people who I had met through Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or people who I'd met at shows, or people I had just admired from a distance and always wanted to have a conversation with. So I had a camera crew come out on tour with me for like 3 weeks, and every day we'd do like 2 or 3 interviews, and it was cool because it gave me the opportunity to kind of turn it around and ask questions as opposed to answering questions. But basically the way it's split up is that for the next 3 months they'll release a handful of episodes, and each episode kind of has a basic theme, like growing up or transitioning, coming out, something like that. And everyone who is interviewed over the course of the series contributes to that conversation and gives their personal story of what that was like for them based on who they are and where they're coming from. So it was just a really incredible experience,
So it was very flexible. You got to pick everybody that you wanted to talk to and just pick based on personal interest.
Well, I mean, that initial list I sent was really way long, and it was obviously chopped down a little bit. But I got to have a lot of amazing conversations, and it was really cool. And they got it too, like going into it. It was like, okay, well, we're doing this on tour, so we kind of got to be a little flexible to like let happen whatever happens on tour. So yeah.
Did you feel like it was a personal growth experience for you in doing it and learning from?
Very much so. Yeah, totally. Things? Yeah, and so reassuring in so many ways. Just because where I was at that point going into shooting it, like, I needed to hear a lot of the things that people were saying, and talking to people who transitioned or came out like a generation ago, or whatever, in the 80s or something like that, and the challenges they faced compared to the way it is now, and hearing that those people too, who you maybe assumed were further along or had it more figured out, and that they're just as much figuring it out as they go along, was it was good.
Did you discover support from any like unlikely places while you were doing it? Did you sort of come across any situations that might have been surprising, or met people that sort of changed your perception?
I think that the most interesting part of it for me was that going into it, like, the camera crew were obviously strangers. And I always take the approach when talking about like trans stuff or whatever, trans issues, is that you have the chance that I have the chance to educate you, and I have the chance to educate them, right? So seeing the camera crew that worked on the show, who were largely like maybe not familiar with the topic that much, seeing them learn as the show is being made and like start to be educated, it was like, well, shit, like at the very least here's 5 or 6 people who totally like have had their minds opened up to something they might not have fully understood before.
Absolutely.
So at the very least that, was pretty incredible.
So it was over the course of a few weeks on tour.
It was like 3 weeks on tour, and there was a little bit of post-shooting and stuff like that happened, but the main chunk of it, was on tour.
Does it revolve around like the band and your personal life as well, or is it more of a vehicle for you to
a little? It's a little more of a vehicle to give other people a voice, and other people the platform and hear from them. I'm obviously a part of it, and I contribute to the conversation and give my story. But the band being on tour is really just, it's like the setting for it. It's not. A couple of times I've done interviews where people are like, "Oh, you got a reality TV show," and I immediately think that they're thinking it's like the real world and like scripted drama, and James is going to be in the confessional booth once a day being like, I don't know.
So it was pretty much just like completely natural. They were just rolling, and you were just exploring like in a very
I took the attitude going into it, knowing that I was going to be pretty much on camera from when I woke up till when I went to sleep, that it was like, it's got to be real, you know, like I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to brush my teeth and they're going to be sticking a camera in my face. So it's like, you know, that's just whatever you get is the truth, you know?
Do you feel like something like this could have happened like 5 or 10 years ago? It seems like
I don't think
climate's
so.
very conducive.
I don't think so.
How would you describe the climate right now as far as people's knowledge and acceptance of the trans community? It seems like it's slowly but surely, like the media as a whole is discussing it, and you're seeing more visible members of the trans community.
It's representation
Yeah.
is what it is, you know, and you have an event like this year where Laverne Cox is on the cover of Time magazine, which is
Absolutely.
monumental. And the way it really works, you know, is that a lot of people are uneducated or are ignorant of certain things because they weren't educated on
Sure.
it. So if like you think of going to school and it's like sex ed was like, that wasn't really even that informative, and
No.
that's talking about sex, not gender even,
Yeah.
you know? So if you were never educated on it and your parents were never educated on it and their parents, then you can't expect someone else to. But knowing that like there's a generation of kids growing up now who will just think that that's part of it, you know, like that of course there's trans people on the cover of Time magazine,
Sure.
of course there's trans people who play in bands, who are writers, who like you know, are in TVs, comedies, dramas, whatever, you know, like to see that out there, that's how minds are changed and that's how culture's changed.
Absolutely.
So it's really inspiring.
Do you think that's the major hurdle, is sort of just education and exposure for people to
Totally,
just kinda-
because you numb them to the sensationalism of it then.
Right.
And it's, you know, like, then it becomes like, oh yeah, duh, of course people are trans, and of course people are queer, and of course people are gay, and there's all different types of people out there that make a world, you know, and it's no big deal.
Absolutely. What would you say is like the biggest misconception about gender identity that's left? Like, I feel like people maybe sometimes get confused about sexuality and gender identity.
Well, I think that's
Do you think
a
the
big
thing?
misconception, is
Yeah.
that oftentimes, especially because, you know, it's like LGBT, you know, like, and those are sexuality things and this is a gender thing, and
Sure.
there's a separation between sexuality and gender. I think that's for sure a big misconception, you know. I think for most part too, people oftentimes think that, you know, by saying like coming out as trans or whatever, or saying you're transitioning, is that people think you're like, you were in box A and now you want to go into box B, when maybe you're just saying fuck a box, you know?
Yeah. Is it something you find yourself explaining to fans or having to like engage that discussion? Do people
Sure,
sometimes
but I mean, I've
come
been
in and-
so educated by fans
Yeah.
too, who I've met at shows, you know, like, but yeah, you know, again, I try to take the approach that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Sometimes there's really rudely asked
Right.
questions, but, you know, if someone has an honest question, I want to be able to try and answer it, you know?
Has talking about gender and gender identity as much as you talk about music lately something that you had to get used to, or is it something that just kind of came naturally
It's
for you?
easier,
as you
you know? It, like, the story with my band used to always be like, what label are you on, you know, and whether or
Right.
not that's punk rock. And when there reaches a point, I think it's like in your early 20s, where you're like, I'm already over talking about this, you know, and I
Yeah.
really don't care if you think something's punk or not. So talking about this, which is real, is like, you know, it's easy. I just, you know, it's relevant to me, and it means a lot to me.
Sure.
And I know at this point that, you know, I have a platform. So if there's anything I can do to take advantage of that in a good way, then sure.
Does the platform that you have ever feel like a lot of pressure? Because I know you're one of the most visible musicians in the trans community, and you've definitely been given this voice and this platform in an AOL show and magazine features. Does that ever feel like a lot of responsibility is sort of like the forefront of
I try not to
educating
think
people?
about
You
it.
don't think
Yeah, just because I know I'm eventually going to fuck something up. So.
Because I mean, I guess people probably know that you're not speaking for everybody.
Right,
You're just
right, totally.
Someone that can
Mhm.
explain in a way that people understand and see, and you're also playing music and doing other things that people know
Right.
you for and see you in that
Totally.
platform.
And again, going back to the show, it's like this is an opportunity to let some other people speak and show you like that there are so many people out there who are gender variant or whatever,
Right.
who are doing amazing things, living like incredibly productive lives, and are just generally cool, you know?
Sure. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Who's gonna take you home tonight? Who's gonna take you home? Does God